So this was a reminder for us about the power of God's love, especially in those times when we feel alone or abandoned. And so speaking of pain, and I don't have to tell you how 2020 has been a challenge for us, I recently read a Facebook post, and I want to share with you what it said, because I thought it expressed well how most of us are feeling at this moment. It said, "Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm over 2020. Time to move on from the crazy that has been this year." And I thought this was kind of summarizes in short sentences how we feel about this pain that we've been experiencing from the pandemic to the racial injustice, to poverty, unemployment, a lot of challenges to know what the future will look like. I know for me the challenge of how do we reopen the church, how do we figure out how to do things. I know everything I've read throughout the resources all over the country saying you got to acknowledge grief, because even when you go back to worship in person, there will be changes and it will not feel like it felt before. And how do we deal with that? I know a lot of people are out and about now pretending that, okay, everything is normal. And it's not true. We know underneath all of this there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, because the pandemic is still going on, the racial injustice is still going on in our world, the unemployment, the poverty, and a lot of the issues that have come with this year. So how do we deal with pain? How do we stay present to it without letting it annihilate us? Because that's one of the fears. I know for me, learning to be present to pain without getting to that point of saying, I can't function. If I am present to all this pain, how do I function after that? And finding a center to help us, a center of love that would help us move forward and be able to function in life while still being open. And so today, one of the scriptures, of course, that come to my mind whenever I think of suffering is Job. The book of Job is full of the mystery of suffering. It's about a man who lived in a fertile land. He had a good life going, a household full of children and wealth and ability to live the good life. But then things started turning upside down for him very quickly. He lost his health, he lost his children, he lost his livelihood. Everything was just going badly for him. He was having the year of the 2020, if you will, having those experiences come all together where he was just feeling like, what is the meaning of my life? And throughout this book, the question of innocent suffering arises. You know, when you haven't done anything to deserve the suffering, it just happens in life. No one deserves to have cancer. No one deserves to be treated as garbage or as a person that doesn't matter. All these things were happening to Job, and the question kept rising up. Why is this happening? It's a natural reaction. And so the book doesn't answer why we suffer, but what the book does, it gives us a pattern for how to be present to suffering. How do we stay present in the moment to the suffering that happens to us and to the world around us? And so there is a pattern, and I think it's a healthy pattern that we can follow. And I hope that you will explore it in your own life. You might be doing it without even thinking about it. And sometimes with the big losses or big pain, we know how to do this. But it is harder when it is smaller stuff or stuff that seems beyond our control. And so the first piece that Job does is he laments. All these questions about why were questions of lament. Why is this happening? It wasn't really that he was seeking an answer, but it was more because he was really struggling, and he stayed with that pain. He talked about it to his friends. He expressed it in his words to even God. And so, lament. Let's listen to a few words of lament. And Elizabeth Gownlock did such a great job in reading this, but I didn't even send her the one verse that I'm going to read to you, because I thought, it's pretty graphic for a young person. And so listen to how he puts to words all of his pain. Really graphic imagery and very powerful. So he doesn't just lament, he really expresses his pain. And this is from chapter 3. It says, "Truly, the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes." Then this is the verse that I deleted from the reading, which Elizabeth did. And this is, he's blaming God. He's saying, his archers surround me. He slashes open my kidneys and shows no mercy. He pours out my gall on the ground. Listen to these words. You can't express it in more graphic terms. He talks about his pain, and he laments over and over again. He engages the pain. He talks about it. He describes it. He doesn't just sit there and say, okay, I'm done. I've had it. I'm not going to be talking about this anymore. He shuts himself out. But he has his friends. They visit him and they talk about it. And they, of course, his friends were offering those traditional explanations of what pain or suffering was about. Well, you must have sinned. You must have done something wrong, even though they couldn't think of what it might have been. But they still found a way to blame him. But yet he continued to engage the question. He continued to lament. And that's really the truth of this moment in our lives. Whether it's from the coronavirus or poverty or unemployment or racial injustice, we have to lament. We have to take time to lament. And it's very uncomfortable for us to do that. When people lament, it makes us feel uncomfortable because our instinct is to want to fix something or to blame someone. But to lament, to really be in the present moment of the pain, to really look at the suffering and to share in it. When someone we love dies, we have to lament. We know that. And there are rituals, there are people that will sit with us. And it is the time we spend together lamenting and bringing before God, before ourselves, before the community, that pain is very essential to the healing process. And again, being able to lament is one of those keys to staying open. And so the same is true when it is a national crisis, like the pandemic or racism. We can't just shut the conversation down, even though we want to, even though we get tired of it, even though we get tired of hearing about the pandemic. The instinct is just to say, I am just done. I'm not going to read one more article. But we can't. We have to be present to that moment of pain. We have to be present to those uncomfortable moments of talking about racism, the pain that is around us. So that leads me to the second step, which is listening. Listen. And so after we lament or before we lament, it could be, those steps are not linear. You could start at any one of them. But listening is a very important piece. What Job did was he was listening. He needed a different perspective. He listened to God's voice. At the end, God speaks to Job, and God doesn't give answers to Job. But by the listening, Job is transformed. So this is what kind of give you a flavor of what God said. This is from chapter 38, verses 1 through 7. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Or what were its bases sunk? And who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy. listening. So again, God says to Job, where were you? How do you even claim to know what's going on? The world is more complicated than you ever imagined, and your knowledge is limited. So Job listened to this reframe from God. You think you know what you know, but life is more complicated, and there's never an end to our learning. And that's why we have to stay open, staying open, listening to our own pain, listening to the pain of another, holding the space as sacred for those moments of difficult experiences, whether it's your experience or somebody else's experience. It's about staying open, staying present to those times of pain. And again, it's very difficult because it makes us uncomfortable. We want answers. Even sometimes we speak for God. We say, God must have a purpose. You just don't know it. Sometimes pain seems so senseless, and it is. Sometimes life comes with its own risks. And the point is not to explain. The point is not to fix. The point is to engage it with love, to be present to those moments of pain. The answers will come. The way forward will become clear if we are being open. Now, the third piece is love. Learning and staying in love. Learning to love in times of great pain. One of the things about pain is that sometimes it isolates us. It makes us feel like we're alone. Nobody cares. Have you ever said that? Nobody seems to care about my pain. Nobody really ever listens, or nobody is ever there for me. But it's not true. If you open your eyes to the people around you, if you open your eyes to the world, you realize there are lots of people who care. And God cares for us. Even in the worst moments, even when we do feel alone, it's not true. And that's the beauty of this story from Job. He engages the questions, he laments, he feels bad, he sits there and dwells on the pain, but he never loses sight that God was with him. He never gives up on God. His wife tells him, just curse God and die. But he doesn't. He continues to pray, he continues to ask, he continues to badger God, to come before God with his pain, to say, hey, I'm hurting. This is not right. He goes to his friends when they come and tells them how he's feeling. He expresses exactly how he's feeling. And so in all of it, God doesn't abandon Job, and Job knows that. And the relationship is never broken. Jesus showed that way as well in times of suffering. Jesus was present to those moments. Jesus showed that he could enter the worst of what humanity could offer and bring love to it, bring presence, doesn't run away from it, but engages it and stays open to love. And so today I want to invite us to look at this pattern of lament, listening, and love. Think about it for your own life and reflect on the experiences of pain we are going through right now, either collectively or individually. And to think, how are we doing on this? Sometimes the lament needs to take a long time. Sometimes the listening needs to take a long time. Sometimes the loving has to happen first, and we have to be grounded in it for such a long time. No matter where you are, this pattern can serve us well by being present to our pain. Again, to stay open to life, to stay open to the gift of life, to stay open so we are not closed and numb and callous to the pain of the world. It's a fine line, and this presents us a great pattern for doing this. And so Barbara Brown Taylor offers a little exercise. She says, maybe today or this week, take time to make a graph of your life, writing your birth date on the left and today's date on the right. Fill in the major events that have made you who you are. So again, it's like a timeline of your life, looking at the major events, and then notice how the spikes of pain helped you grow or diminish as a person. Because when we numb, when we hide, when we lash out at others, we lose that ability to really grow from those experiences. So notice why some experiences helped you grow while others had the opposite effect on you. They diminished you. And of course, not to sit there and judge yourself, but to really open up to some wisdom, greater wisdom for you. I want to share with you a prayer that I learned a few years ago. It is called the Whatever Prayer, Whatever Prayer. And it could become something that that you could use in those times when there's pain and you don't want to face it, or you're avoiding dealing with a tough issue. It's a simple prayer, it's a powerful prayer. And I will post it as we end. And so it says, whatever I have to see, whatever I have to feel, whatever I have to remember, whatever I have to go through, if it is for my healing and the highest good of all beings, I agree to it with God's help and love. Now, I read it once, but this second time I want you to pray it with me. And I'll give you a blessing after that. And we have the song, The Prayer from Valerie. So we will hopefully enter into that depth of prayer together. So let us pray this prayer together. Whatever I have to see, whatever I have to feel, whatever I have to remember, whatever I have to go through, if it is for my healing and the highest good of all beings, I agree to it with God's help and love. Amen.